Hey guys, it's me Bao here, and it's been about 8 months since my last Honkai Impact 3rd tier list, so I thought now was a good time to make another one because Lunar Vow just came out. So something important to note is that this tier list is for version 7.0. The Honkai Impact meta moves very fast, so what might be meta now might not be meta from like a year from now. So if you're watching this in the future, this might not be applicable anymore. Now, what's important to note is that there isn't one all-powerful DPS or one all-powerful support, and this is due to both the weather system and also how typing works in Honkai Impact with like different lightning, ice, physical teams, right? Some bosses are just weaker to physical or weaker to ice, etc. So what I'm essentially doing today is telling you what to roll for every single element and type. And even though this is an investment guide, I do think you need to use your own discretion a bit. For example, if you already have like Herrscher of Thunder, but you have like no physical DPSs, no ice DPSs, maybe prioritize those instead of like Lunar Vow right now, right? But yeah, let's get right into it. So currently for lightning teams, Lunar Vow is the strongest Valkyrie by far, both as a DPS and a support. She is probably a must pull if you don't have a Herrscher Thunder and a Herrscher Truth yet. She's stronger than SSS Herrscher Thunder. She's stronger than Mobius and Aponia by a long shot because Herrscher Thunder was already taking over Aponia and Mobius's bosses. So for this current version at least, Lunar Vow is probably the strongest DPS. Not to mention, she's also a great support. For Aponia, she replaces the Herrscher Truth, and for Mobius, she replaces Eden. This means that she can also revive these old lightning DPSs, making her a lot more valuable than just the Herrscher Thunder right now. So it goes without saying that I do think Lunar Vow is probably the best pull for lightning teams right now. I think she's a must pull for new players if you don't have a built lightning team yet. However, if you do have the Herrscher of Truth and the Herrscher Thunder both full set, then she's not necessarily a must pull if you want to just stay in Red Lotus, but I'd still recommend pulling for her either way, so she's definitely an easy S tier. Now for new players, I really can't recommend gearing up the old lightning DPSs anymore, at least not over Lunar Vow. Especially for Aponia and Mobius, who have not been in meta for the past few patches. The only really relevant other lightning DPS was Herrscher Thunder, and obviously, like I said earlier, she's replaced by Lunar Vow. So honestly, I wouldn't really worry about pulling them if you're a new player. Veteran players could consider pulling for Mobius and Aponia since they are a bit stronger now thanks to Lunar Vow's support capability, but it is a huge sunk cost to buy them, especially since they're probably going to fall off soon, unfortunately. I forgot to mention this earlier, but Herrscher of Origin is also a notable lightning DPS. For new players, I can't really recommend pulling for her because you really only want to use her in the Herrscher Trio team. There's no reason to use her as a lightning DPS over Lunar Vow, so it's really expensive these days to actually build the Herrscher Trio team. On release, Herrscher of Origin was free, but now that you have to pay to get her, like crystals to get her, and you have to spend like a lot of crystals to get their gear, I can't really recommend Herrscher of Origin for new players. Obviously, for competitive players, you guys already know, you're only using her for Herrscher Trio team. I'll expand on this more later, but the Herrscher Trio team is very strong, but I'm going to talk about it more later at the end of the video. As for lightning supports, the three most notable Valkyries are Eden, Lunar Vow, and Herrscher Truth. Herrscher Truth is still a great pull. She serves as the elemental support for all teams, and she's also used in the Herrscher Trio. Especially for lightning teams though, you need her to support Lunar Vow to her maximum degree, so I'd say she's still probably one of the best supports for lightning team, if not the best one. And the other contender for the best support for lightning teams is of course Lunar Vow herself. It's debatable if she's actually better for some teams, but overall though, she's still a great support. And you're not rolling her just for support, you're also rolling for as a DPS, right? So once again, like I said earlier, definitely recommended pull. Finally, we have Eden. Now, Eden is really strong once you get her to max rank SSS with her weapons as well, but if you don't have those, then she kind of falls apart and does worse than Partophilis. So I do think that you really want to build her for lightning teams, but only if you have her weapon and her ranks. As for Stigmata, you can either use the Hendel set, which is like farmable, or you can use Turgenev if you have that. Now on to fire teams, the most notable DPS right now is definitely Seeding. Seeding outperforms Spina Astra after she hits S2, and you only need to roll for her Chakram because her Stigmatas are actually free. You can farm for them in the Forge. So I definitely recommend pulling for Seeding's weapon if you're a new player. She's farmable, you can get her for free from the War Treasury, and her Stigmatas for free. So I'd say definitely pull for Seeding's weapon. And then the next fire Valkyries are like, I guess, Herrscher, Flame Scion, Vilvi, Spina Astra. Those Valkyries, unfortunately, I don't know what it is, but fire teams have not been eating good these past few patches. All those DPSs have kind of fallen off. The most notable one is probably Herrscher Flame Scion. She's still probably the next best fire DPS. There's also the Herrscher Finality. Once again, you're only using her for the Herrscher trio team. So if you're like one Valkyrie off, then just go ahead and get it. But I wouldn't recommend pulling her as your new player because it's too expensive to build the Herrscher trio team. Valkyrie is not really a great fire DPS. She's more of a quantum DPS. But there's other better options like Susanna now. So I can only recommend pulling for Seeding's weapon. If you're a veteran player, I still wouldn't recommend any of those fire Valks. I can only recommend Seeding. Although it is worth mentioning that Seeding really isn't that strong until you start ranking her up. But once you do rank her up, then she will be a great fire DPS. There are only two notable fire supports right now, and that's Chrono Navi and Herrscher of Truth. However, part of Phyllis does replace Herrscher of Truth if you don't have Herrscher of Truth. But as stated earlier, I really do think you should pull for Herrscher of Truth if you don't have her yet, and especially get her weapon if you can. As for Chrono Navi though, it's kind of awkward because you need to either all in on her or just settle for budget. Chrono Navi's 3-set Stigmata is like extremely strong for fire teams. Her 3-set Stigmata is a lot stronger than just having 2 pieces or having Turgenev. So unfortunately, she is quite expensive. I just settled for weapon and Turgenev personally. Especially since Chrono Navi doesn't see as much use as other SP Valkyries. So for new players, I'd recommend only pulling for her weapon and not going full set because it's extremely expensive. If you're a whale, then do it. But otherwise, I'd maybe hold out on that. Alright, onto Ice teams. Currently the main DPSs are Herrscher of Reason, Herrscher of Human, Herrscher of Truth even, Silverwing Burner, there's a lot of them. Currently, the strongest DPS for Ice teams at least is probably the Herrscher of Human. However, she's been out for a long time now, so I can't really guarantee her longevity, but at least for now, she is the strongest Ice DPS. As for coverage, Herrscher Human also has the widest coverage for all Ice bosses. She covers multiple bosses, including the Twin Wardens, which are pretty new. So, she's still very relevant in the meta right now, at least. I'm kind of conflicted to recommend pulling her or not, because it's always expensive to buy not only a full set, but also the Valkyrie itself. So I think this is something you'll have to make your own decision on based off your teams currently, and if you want to be a meta slave. However, I do strongly recommend though that if you don't have the Herrscher of Truth yet, pull her. She will function as a great Ice DPS, although not as strong as Herrscher Human, but still a great replacement, and she's also just an all-around support that you need for your elemental teams. So definitely do not skip Herrscher of Truth at least. The only other Ice Valkyrie I'd consider gearing is probably the Herrscher of Reason, since her Stigmata is farmable. However, if you're a new player, it's going to take a long time to get her to a meta level since you need to get ranks on her as well as her weapon. Now, if you're a veteran with at least an SS Herrscher of Reason and all her Stigmatas farmed for already, then I'd maybe consider picking up the Divine Key, but it comes not that often, so just keep that in mind. As for Ice supports, there's only really Jade Knight and Shigeru Akira. There's also Pardo Fearless, but she's basically power crept by Shigeru Akira right now. I definitely recommend farming for both of them. And keep this in mind, for Jade Knight, you really need her weapon, or else she's kind of unplayable. You also really want Su Sheng to be at least SS rank, so definitely keep farming for her every week from the War Treasury. As for Shigeru Akira, you definitely need her weapon since it gives her SP. And as for her Stigmata, you want her either all in or just not pull for it in the first place. Turgenev is usually better than any 2-piece combination, but her full set is extremely strong, so either all in or just don't bother. That being said though, if you do want to all in, she's a great pull. Finally, I thought I'd make a little section for the Herrscher Trio team. Right now, the only Valkyrie that's really worth pulling for from the Herrscher Trio is Herrscher Truth. However, if you're only missing one Valkyrie from the Herrscher team, such as Origin or Finality, then they could be a worthy pickup because they cover so many elemental weathers. And now we have physical teams. The current meta DPSs are Dreamweaver, the Herrscher Sentience, Susanna, and the Herrscher Rebirth. However, Planus Equinox does see some use for imaginary weathers. The physical DPSs are actually very competitive with each other, with the exclusion of Planus Equinox, since the Herrscher Cheer team usually outdoes her. However, it's really hard to recommend just one physical DPS, but I can recommend that you should definitely pull for the Herrscher Rebirth first though. Physical teams will just never be meta unless you have a source of impair, which usually comes from the Herrscher Sentience or Herrscher Rebirth. Herrscher Rebirth is supposed to power creep Herrscher Sentience though, not to mention that she's a super strong DPS, stronger than SSS Miss Pink Elf, so definitely get Herrscher Rebirth in her gears if you can. Herrscher Sentience will be free next update if you do want to use her in place of Herrscher Rebirth for now. But honestly, I really would not consider pulling for any physical DPSs until you get at least the Herrscher Sentience in her gears or the Herrscher Rebirth. But definitely prioritize the Herrscher Rebirth. As for physical DPSs, Dreamweaver is probably the premier physical DPS right now. However, she is very expensive to build, and people don't tend to actually use her that often. She's actually replaceable by a triple support team like Herrscher Sentience, Herrscher Rebirth, and Griseo. But she definitely is very easy to use. If you have gears from Platinus Equinox, then her gears are actually pretty good on Dreamweaver, especially her Stigmata. But otherwise, though, I can't strongly recommend her, but if you do choose to pull her, then she actually is a great physical DPS and not a terrible pick. Next is the Herrscher Sentience and her new Divine Key. Treat this as you would the Star of Eden to Herrscher of Reason. This is going to last for a few patches, and she'll have like 1 or 2 really good boss matchups, but otherwise she'll not replace the Herrscher of Rebirth or Dreamweaver. And honestly, it is kind of expensive to like invest that much crystals into what I consider a temporary physical Valkyrie, right? She's not going to have that much longevity compared to the other 2 physical Valkyries. However, this is also pure speculation. She could also be like the Herrscher of Thunder with her Divine Key, where she completely replaced the old Lightning DPSs, but it's kind of hard to tell right now, and it seems like most people kind of agree that she's going to be more like the Herrscher of Reason in the Star of Eden. Now, of course, she is going to get out for free next update, and if you don't have any other physical DPSs, then I can recommend pulling for her Divine Key, especially since you can get some rank ups for free now from Elysian Realm. Plus, she also is a strong support, and you kind of need her to use Herrscher of Rebirth as a DPS. Plus, you can get her other weapon, Nebulous Duality, from the exchange shop. At least right now, she's pretty strong as a physical DPS and a good support for the Herrscher of Rebirth, but she really is just completely power cut by Herrscher of Rebirth, and I can't really see her staying in the meta for much longer. Finally, we have Susanna. Susanna has proven to be actually a very strong physical DPS, especially for an SP Valkyrie. However, she is very reliant on her 3-piece set to actually be strong because it gives SP regen, so it's kind of hard to use her ultimate if you don't have her full set. However, if you do have Lunar Vow, then her value diminishes a little bit because Susanna's main goal is to bleed weak targets, but Lunar Vow actually does bleed damage too. So for now, she's still a pretty strong pickup, but we'll have to see in the future if Lunar Vow will power creeper for bleed targets. And for supports, I'm going to skip over Herrscher Sentience and Herrscher of Rebirth because I basically already talked about them enough. So instead, we're going to focus more on Prometheus and Griseo. I'm going to keep it really short and simple. If you want to build a physical team, then get Prometheus gears. Don't roll for Griseo anymore because she's going to be replaced by the older Griseo in 7.1. So that's actually really it for physical supports, actually. So this is really the end of the tier list. Just remember that the meta changes really often, so this could be like not applicable in a year from now. But at least for now, I think this is a pretty accurate tier list. Some other good resources are just like Marissa Honkai, the wiki. I mean, there's plenty of like resources too. So go ahead and consult those before you like make a decision on what to pull and what not to pull. Thank you for watching, guys. Leave a like, subscribe, and comment.